You wake up one morning and realize you are exhausted. Not the kind of tired that sleep can fix. Not the fatigue that comes from working hard or living fully. This is different. This is the bone-deep weariness of someone who has been giving and giving and giving to people who only know how to take. You lie there in the quiet, and something shifts. A thought rises that you have been pushing down for months, or maybe years. You have been walking on eggshells so long, you forgot what solid ground feels like. You have been editing your words, managing your tone, predicting reactions, absorbing blame that was never yours to carry. You have been making yourself smaller, so someone else could feel bigger. And the worst part, the part that makes your chest tight with something between grief and rage, is that you cannot pinpoint the exact moment you agreed to this arrangement. When did you become the person who apologizes for other people's behavior? When did you start believing that your boundaries were negotiable but theirs were sacred? When did you accept that your peace was the price you paid for keeping the peace? There is a specific kind of anger that comes with this realization. Not the hot, explosive kind. The cold, clarifying kind. The kind that burns away fog and shows you exactly how long you have been tolerating the intolerable. You see it now. The patterns, the cycles, the way certain people in your life only call when they need something. The way conversations always seem to center on their problems, their feelings, their version of events. The way you leave interactions with them feeling drained, confused, somehow responsible for things you did not do, and problems you did not create. You have been hosting emotional vampires, people who feed on your energy, your empathy, your endless capacity to understand and forgive. They take without filling, they drain without replenishing, and they are so skilled at what they do that you barely noticed it happening. They made you feel like caring for them was love, like tolerating their behavior was loyalty, like setting a boundary would make you the villain in a story where you have been the victim all along. But here is what nobody tells you about toxic people. They do not announce themselves. They do not walk into your life wearing signs that say manipulator or energy thief or emotional parasite. They come disguised as need, as vulnerability, as friendship, as family, as love. They find the best parts of you, the kind parts, the empathetic parts, the parts that want to help and heal and save, and they weaponize those parts against you. You thought you were being compassionate. You were being consumed. You thought you were being understanding. You were being used. You thought you were being patient. You were being erased, one small compromise at a time, until you looked in the mirror and barely recognized the person staring back. This is the invisible theft. They did not take your possessions. They took something far more valuable. They took your peace, your clarity, your ability to trust yourself, your confidence in your own perceptions. They made you doubt your reality so many times that you stopped trusting your instincts. They trained you to second-guess every feeling, every boundary, every moment of discomfort. They convinced you that the problem was your sensitivity, not their toxicity. That the issue was your standards, not their behavior. And the cruelest part, they made you feel guilty for noticing. Guilty for pulling back. Guilty for wanting less chaos and more calm. They framed your self-protection as selfishness, your boundaries as betrayal, your exhaustion as evidence that you were not trying hard enough to make things work. But something has changed. Today. Right now. In this moment. You are done. Not in the loud, dramatic way. In the quiet, certain way, the way that shifts everything. You are done being the person who carries other people's emotional bags while they walk freely beside you. Done being the translator for people who refuse to speak clearly. Done being the shock absorber for people who never learned to manage their own impact. You are ready for something different. Not hardness, not coldness, not cruelty or revenge or becoming the very thing you despise. You are ready for immunity, real immunity, the kind that does not come from building walls so high nobody can reach you, the kind that comes from developing such a sophisticated internal system that you recognize poison before it enters your bloodstream. Think about your physical immune system for a moment. It does not reject everything. It does not treat every molecule that enters your body as a threat. That would be autoimmune disease. That would be your body attacking itself. A healthy immune system is discerning. It recognizes the difference between nourishment and poison, between medicine and toxin, between what belongs and what must be expelled. It responds proportionally, swiftly, without drama or debate. This is what you are building. Emotional immunity. The ability to recognize toxic behavior in real time. The capacity to respond appropriately without over-explaining or under-protecting. The wisdom to distinguish between someone having a hard time and someone being hard to be around. The strength to care about someone from a distance instead of sacrificing yourself up close. You are not becoming mean. You are becoming honest. You are not becoming closed. You are becoming selective. You are not becoming cold. You are becoming warm only toward those who do not mistake your warmth for weakness. By the end of this journey, you will no longer be a target. You will no longer radiate the specific frequency that toxic people hunt for. You will no longer be the person who attracts chaos and mistakes it for chemistry, who confuses intensity with intimacy, who interprets dysfunction as depth. You will become someone who can spot manipulation within 3 conversations. Someone whose boundaries are so natural they do not require explanation or defense. Someone who can say no without guilt, yes without resentment, and maybe without ambiguity. Someone who understands that real love does not require constant proof, that healthy relationships do not feel like work, that genuine connection does not leave you depleted. You will learn to trust yourself again, to believe your perceptions, to honor your discomfort, to understand that if something feels wrong, it probably is, even if you cannot articulate exactly why. Especially if you cannot articulate exactly why. Toxic people thrive in the space between your intuition and your rationalization. They count on you talking yourself out of what you know. You will discover that distance is sometimes the most loving thing you can offer. That silence can be more honest than speech, that walking away is not giving up on someone. It is refusing to give up on yourself. This transformation will not happen overnight. Immunity is not built in a single moment of realization. It is built through repeated practice, through making hard choices, through sitting with discomfort instead of rushing to resolve it, through letting people be disappointed in you, through allowing relationships to end that were never serving you anyway. But it will happen. You will change, not into someone unrecognizable, into someone more truly yourself, the version of you that existed before you learned to shrink, before you started managing other people's feelings at the expense of your own, before you believed that being needed was the same thing as being loved. You will learn the science behind why you were vulnerable in the first place, not because you are weak, because you are wired for connection, and certain people exploit that wiring. You will understand the psychology of manipulation, the neuroscience of boundaries, the biology of people-pleasing, and how to rewire it. You will gain tools, real, practical, immediate tools, not vague advice about loving yourself or setting boundaries. Specific techniques for recognizing toxic patterns early, for responding without getting pulled into drama, for enforcing consequences calmly, for protecting your energy without apology. You will build a life so aligned, so purposeful, so full, that toxic people have no cracks to slip through. A life where your time is precious because you value it, where your peace is protected because you prioritize it, where your relationships are reciprocal because you require it. And when the tests come, and they will come, you will pass them. When toxic people escalate because your boundaries suddenly appear, when they cycle through charm and rage and victimhood, trying to find the strategy that used to work, when family gatherings or work situations or shared custody arrangements force proximity, you will remain steady, clear, unmoved by tactics that once would have destroyed your resolve. This is not about perfection. You will stumble. You will doubt. You will have moments where guilt tries to pull you back into old patterns, where loneliness tempts you to accept less than you deserve, where someone's tears or anger or neediness triggers that old instinct to fix, to soothe, to sacrifice. But you will recover faster each time. You will recognize the pattern sooner. You will trust yourself more deeply. And eventually, something remarkable will happen. Toxic people will simply stop showing up in your life. Not because you are avoiding everyone, because you have become energetically incompatible with dysfunction. You no longer emit the signal they hunt for. The uncertainty, the over-responsibility, the desperate need to be needed. You will have become immune, not isolated, not hardened, not bitter or cynical or closed. Immune, wise, discerning, free. Finally free to build relationships with people who deserve the gift of your presence, who honor your boundaries instead of testing them, who celebrate your growth instead of resenting it, who show up consistently instead of only when it is convenient. This is the promise. This is the journey. This is what awaits you on the other side of this transformation. A life where peace is not something you sacrifice, where your energy is not something you give away, where your presence is not something people take for granted. A life where you are no longer the person who tolerates what should be intolerable, who accepts what should be unacceptable, who stays where you should have left long ago. You are ready. The exhaustion brought you here. The realization opened the door. Now you walk through it, into clarity, into strength, into the version of yourself that has been waiting for you to finally choose you. The clarity you felt in that moment of realization, that cold, burning understanding that something has to change, it starts to sharpen into focus. You begin to see the faces, the specific people, the exact situations, the patterns that have been running your life while you pretended not to notice. There is the friend. You know the one. The friend who disappears for weeks, sometimes months, living their life without you. But the moment something goes wrong, the moment they need advice or money or someone to listen to them process the same relationship drama for the 15th time, your phone lights up. And somehow, every single time, you answer, you clear your schedule, you show up, you listen, you give, you support, you solve. And when the crisis passes, when they have taken what they needed from you, they vanish again, back into their life, the life that apparently has no room for you unless you are useful, You have tested this. You know you have. You stopped reaching out first, just to see what would happen. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Silence. Until they needed something again. And then suddenly, you were the best friend they ever had. The one who always understands. The one they can count on. And you felt that familiar warmth, that validation, that sense of being valued. Until you realized you were not valued. You were convenient. There is a difference. You are learning to see it now. There is the family member. Maybe a parent. Maybe a sibling. The one who turns every conversation into an examination of your life choices. You got a promotion at work and somehow the conversation becomes about how you are working too much, sacrificing family time, chasing money instead of meaning. You started dating someone new, and suddenly they are analyzing your pattern of choosing the wrong people, reminding you of past failures, planting seeds of doubt disguised as concern. You bought a house, changed careers, cut your hair, chose not to have children, chose to have children, moved cities, stayed in your hometown. Whatever you did, it becomes evidence that you are doing it wrong, that you need their guidance, their correction, their superior wisdom about how you should be living your life. And the cruelest part is that they frame it as love, as caring, as family looking out for family. So when you feel that tightness in your chest, that urge to defend yourself, that flash of anger, you swallow it. Because getting upset would prove you are too sensitive, too defensive, unable to handle feedback. They have trained you to accept criticism disguised as concern and call it connection. There is the partner, the one who knows exactly what to say after they hurt you. The apologies are poetry, heartfelt, detailed. They can articulate precisely what they did wrong, why it was wrong, how it made you feel. They can cry, they can promise, they can make you believe that this time it will be different. And it is. For a week, maybe 2, maybe a month if you are lucky. Then the same pattern resurfaces, different details, same dynamic, the dismissiveness, the broken promises, the way your needs somehow always become negotiable while theirs remain absolute. You have had the same conversation 17 times. You have heard the same apology in 17 different variations. You have felt that same hope that maybe they finally heard you, that maybe this is the turning point. And every single time, you end up back here, exhausted, explaining again why something hurt, listening to why they did it anyway, accepting an apology that you both know is just buying time until the next incident. You are not in a relationship. You are in a loop, and you keep walking into it with your eyes open because closing them feels worse. There is the co-worker, the one who somehow always ends up presenting your ideas in meetings, who asks for your help on projects, and then thanks you by mentioning your contribution in passing, if at all, who positions themselves as the expert by absorbing your expertise. And the most confusing part is that they are nice about it. They compliment you. They tell you how smart you are. They make you feel seen just enough that calling them out feels petty, like you are being territorial or insecure. So you let it happen, again and again, and you feel that slow erosion of your professional identity, that creeping doubt about whether your ideas are actually good or if you just got lucky, whether you deserve credit or if you are being greedy for wanting recognition for work you actually did. These people do not arrive with warning labels. They do not introduce themselves as energy vampires or manipulators or emotional parasites. They come wrapped in the language of love and need and loyalty, They use words like family and friendship and partnership. They show up in moments of vulnerability and offer exactly what you were looking for. Someone who seems to care, someone who seems to see you, someone who seems to want connection as much as you do. And that is how they get in, not through your weaknesses, through your strengths, through your empathy, your compassion, your willingness to give people chances, your belief that everyone deserves understanding, your commitment to seeing the best in people. These are beautiful qualities, necessary qualities, the qualities that make you a good human. And toxic people have learned to exploit them with surgical precision. You have been paying a price for being kind. You know this now. The price shows up in your body first. The way your stomach drops when you see their name on your phone. The tension that builds in your shoulders before you have to see them. The headaches that appear after spending time with them. The exhaustion that is not physical, but somehow more debilitating than if you had run a marathon. Your body has been trying to tell you something. You have been too busy being understanding to listen. The price shows up in your sleep. The 3 a.m. wake-ups where you rehearse conversations you need to have, where you practice setting boundaries you will probably never enforce, where you imagine finally saying the things you have been swallowing for months or years. You lie there in the dark, exhausted but wired, playing out scenarios, preparing for confrontations that may never come, because actually having them feels more terrifying than just continuing to endure. The price shows up in your self-worth. You have started to question yourself in ways you never did before. Are you too sensitive? Are you overreacting? Are you the problem? Maybe you are not communicating clearly enough. Maybe you are expecting too much. Maybe this is just what relationships are, and you have unrealistic standards. These questions loop in your mind constantly. Not because you are confused, because they have made confusion your default state. Gaslighting does not always look like someone telling you that something did not happen. Sometimes it looks like someone making you doubt your right to be upset that it did. The price shows up in your other relationships. You have become cautious, guarded. You meet someone genuinely kind and you wait for the other shoe to drop. You meet someone who respects your boundaries and you wonder what they want. You meet someone who is consistent and you do not trust it because consistency has become unfamiliar. Toxic people have not just damaged your relationship with them. They have damaged your ability to recognize healthy relationships when they appear. You have been eating poison so long that nourishment tastes strange. The price shows up in your career decisions. You stayed in a job longer than you should have because a toxic boss convinced you that you were not ready for the next level. You turned down opportunities because a jealous partner made you feel guilty for outgrowing them. You stopped sharing your wins because someone in your life could not celebrate without somehow making it about themselves or finding the flaw in your success. You have been dimming your light to make other people comfortable with their darkness. The price shows up in your daily experience of life. You have stopped trusting your instincts. When something feels wrong, you talk yourself out of it. When someone crosses a line, you make excuses for them. When you feel disrespected, you wonder if you are being too proud. You have learned to override your internal warning system so thoroughly that you no longer hear the alarm bells when they ring. And this is the most dangerous price of all. Because when you cannot trust yourself, you become dependent on other people to tell you what is real. And if those people are the very ones distorting your reality, you are trapped in a maze with no exit. You know you are being used. This is what makes it so painful. You are not blind. You are not stupid. You see the patterns. You recognize the cycles. You know that certain people in your life take far more than they give, that some relationships cost you more than they return, that you are pouring energy into connections that would disappear if you stopped being the one to maintain them. You know all of this, and yet you keep showing up, keep giving, keep hoping that this time will be different, that eventually your consistency will inspire theirs, that your loyalty will earn reciprocity, that your love will transform them into someone capable of loving you back. But it does not work that way. You cannot love someone into health. You cannot sacrifice yourself into mattering to someone who does not value sacrifice. You cannot be understanding enough to make someone finally understand you. Toxic people do not change because you are patient with them. They continue because you are patient with them. Your tolerance is not teaching them. It is training them. Training them that your boundaries are flexible, that your needs are optional, that your discomfort is acceptable collateral damage in the maintenance of their comfort. And the shame you feel about all of this, that shame is part of the trap. You are ashamed that you let it go on this long, ashamed that you did not see it sooner, ashamed that you keep going back, ashamed that other people seem to have figured out how to avoid toxic people while you keep collecting them like painful souvenirs. This shame keeps you silent, keeps you isolated, keeps you from reaching out for help or perspective, because admitting the truth feels like admitting failure. But you haven't failed. You have been human. You have been kind in a world that often mistakes kindness for weakness. You have been hopeful in situations that required skepticism. You have been loyal to people who never earned that loyalty. These are not character flaws. These are the consequences of having a good heart in proximity to people with bad intentions. Or sometimes, not even bad intentions, just profound brokenness they refuse to address, just patterns they will not interrupt, just selfishness they have convinced themselves is need. You are tired of making excuses for people who never make efforts, tired of being the only one who apologizes, the only one who compromises, the only one who remembers birthdays and asks how someone is doing and shows up when they say they will. You are tired of relationships where you are the only one invested in keeping them alive, where your presence is assumed but your absence is barely noticed, where you are expected to understand everyone's limitations but yours are seen as character defects. This is the cost of being kind without being wise, of being compassionate without being discerning, of being available without being valued, and you have been paying this cost in increments for so long that you forgot there was another way to live. A way where relationships are reciprocal, where your energy is honored, where your peace is protected, where people earn access to you instead of assuming it, where love does not feel like work and connection does not feel like loss. You cannot unsee what you have seen, cannot unknow what you now know, the specific faces, the exact patterns, the clear cost. This awareness is uncomfortable, painful even, but it is also the beginning. The first step toward immunity is recognition. You are recognizing, and recognition, as uncomfortable as it is the only path to freedom. The recognition settles into something deeper now, something that goes beneath the specific faces and situations, beneath the patterns and the pain. You need to understand why. Not so you can blame yourself more thoroughly, so you can finally stop blaming yourself altogether. Because the reason you let toxic people in, the reason you stayed longer than you should have, the reason you kept giving chances that were never earned, none of it has to do with weakness or stupidity or character flaws. It has to do with wiring, with conditioning, with survival mechanisms that once protected you, but now leave you vulnerable. Let's start with the brain. Your beautiful, complex, pattern-seeking brain that learned very early how to keep you safe. When you were young, probably before you can even remember, your brain was solving the most important equation of your life. How do I get my needs met? How do I ensure the people who are supposed to care for me actually show up? What do I have to do? Who do I have to be to guarantee survival? If you grew up in an environment where love was conditional, where approval had to be earned, where your needs were treated as inconvenient or your emotions as too much, your brain made an adaptation. It learned that safety equals pleasing others, that survival requires monitoring the moods of the people around you and adjusting yourself accordingly, that your value is not inherent, but something you must constantly prove through service, compliance, understanding, and self-sacrifice. This is attachment wiring. This is your nervous system learning that connection, the most fundamental human need, besides food and shelter, comes with conditions. And when connection is conditional in childhood, the brain does not conclude that the adults are failing. The brain concludes that you are not doing enough, not being enough, that if you could just be better, quieter, more helpful, more understanding, more grateful, then finally you would be safe. Finally you would be loved without having to earn it every single day. These neural pathways, these associations between approval and survival, they do not disappear when you become an adult. They do not vanish just because you now have the cognitive capacity to understand that love should not require constant auditions. The wiring remains. And toxic people, whether they realize it or not, they know how to find that wiring and activate it. They know how to make you feel like a child again, desperate for approval, willing to twist yourself into shapes that hurt, just to avoid abandonment. Then there is trauma. Not everyone who attracts toxic people has had dramatic trauma, but many have had experiences that taught the nervous system to be hypervigilant, to scan constantly for danger, to interpret intensity as intimacy because intensity feels familiar. Chaos feels like home when home was chaotic. Drama feels like love when love was dramatic. And calm, healthy, consistent people can feel boring or suspicious, because boring and suspicious is what safety feels like when you were never actually safe. Trauma does something specific to your threat detection system. It makes you alert to danger, yes, but it also makes you misidentify what danger looks like. You become hyper-aware of the wrong things. You notice when someone seems upset with you, but miss when they are slowly eroding your boundaries. You feel the anxiety of potential abandonment, but not the toxicity of current mistreatment. You are scanning for the threats you learned in childhood, while missing the threats standing right in front of you, wearing the mask of need or love or family. And here is the cruelest part of the trauma response. It makes intensity feel like connection. When someone comes on strong, when they share deep secrets too soon, when they create drama and urgency and emotional highs and lows, your nervous system recognizes this pattern. It feels like the relationships you learned were normal. It triggers that familiar cocktail of anxiety and attachment. And you mistake this nervous system activation for chemistry, for fate, for finally meeting someone who really sees you, when what you are actually experiencing is your trauma recognizing their trauma and mistaking resonance for compatibility. Empathy becomes a weapon in the wrong hands. You have empathy, deep empathy, the kind that allows you to feel what others feel, to understand their pain, to see their humanity even when they are behaving inhumanely. This is a gift. This is what makes you capable of real love, real friendship, real connection. But empathy without boundaries is not a virtue. It is a vulnerability. It is an open door with no lock. And toxic people can sense this. They can feel when someone has empathy that exceeds their self-protection, and they move toward it the way a moth moves toward light. You are taught to be nice. This is cultural conditioning so deep you probably do not even see it as conditioning. You are taught that being nice is more important than being honest, that preserving someone's feelings is more valuable than protecting your own peace, that if someone is upset with you, it is your responsibility to fix it, even if you did nothing wrong. Especially if you did nothing wrong, because then you have the power to restore harmony by simply apologizing, accommodating, shrinking. You learned that giving people endless chances is what good people do, that holding grudges is petty, that boundaries are mean, that saying no makes you selfish, that prioritizing yourself is self-centered. You learned that your worth is measured by how much you tolerate, how much you forgive, how much you can endure while still being kind. Nobody explicitly taught you this in one sitting, but you absorbed it from 1,000 small moments, from praise when you shared your toys even though you did not want to, from approval when you did not complain, even though something bothered you, from the label of being difficult or sensitive, or too much whenever you advocated for yourself. And toxic people, they are masters at finding the exact wound and pressing on it. They know, somehow they know, what you are most afraid of. Are you afraid of being seen as selfish? They will call you selfish the moment you set a boundary. Are you afraid of being abandoned? They will threaten to leave whenever you ask for change. Are you afraid of being seen as the bad person? They will position themselves as the victim in every conflict, no matter who actually caused harm. They weaponize your fears. They use your values against you. Your loyalty becomes their permission to be disloyal. Your kindness becomes their justification for cruelty. Your fear of being the villain becomes their guarantee that you will tolerate being the victim. There is a psychological concept that explains why toxic relationships can feel more compelling than healthy ones. It is called intermittent reinforcement, and it is the same principle that makes gambling addictive. When a reward comes unpredictably, when kindness is random rather than consistent, the brain becomes obsessed with earning that reward again. A slot machine that pays out every time is boring. A slot machine that pays out occasionally is addictive. The unpredictability creates a dopamine response that consistent kindness never could. This is why you can be in a relationship with someone who treats you beautifully, consistently, respectfully, and feel nothing, and then be in a relationship with someone who treats you terribly 90% of the time, but occasionally shows you glimpses of something good, and you cannot let go. Your brain is responding to the unpredictability, to the challenge, to the hope that if you just figure out the right combination of words or actions or ways of being, you can make the good version of them appear more often. You are playing a slot machine disguised as a relationship, and you will keep playing as long as there are occasional wins to keep the hope alive. A toxic person who is mean all the time is easy to leave. A toxic person who is sometimes wonderful, who has moments of real connection sandwiched between long stretches of neglect or mistreatment, that person is almost impossible to leave, because your brain remembers the good moments with more intensity than the bad ones. because you keep thinking, if they can be that person sometimes, they can be that person all the time. Because you believe that love means waiting for someone to become the best version of themselves, even if that version only exists 10% of the time. But here is the truth that will set you free. Healthy love is boring by comparison. It is consistent, predictable, stable. There is no drama, no chaos, no emotional roller coaster, no wondering if today will be a good day or a bad day depending on their mood. Healthy love is someone showing up the same way every time, someone whose kindness is not conditional on whether you pleased them that day, someone whose respect for you does not fluctuate based on their emotional state. And if you are wired to associate intensity with love, this kind of relationship can feel flat, like something is missing. What is missing is the anxiety. And you have been confusing anxiety with attraction for so long that peace feels wrong. Your susceptibility to toxic people is not a character flaw. It is not evidence that something is broken in you. It is evidence that you developed survival strategies in an environment where those strategies were necessary, that you learned to read people, to accommodate, to please, to understand, because those skills kept you safe once upon a time. But the environment changed. You grew up. You left that house, or that situation, or that version of yourself, and the strategies that once protected you are now exposing you to harm. You are not weak for having empathy. You are not foolish for wanting to believe the best about people. You are not naive for giving chances. You are human. You are wired for connection, and you developed an operating system that prioritized other people's comfort over your own safety, because once, probably when you were too young to choose differently, that was the smartest thing you could do. That was survival. But survival is not the same thing as living, and what kept you alive then is slowly killing you now. The brain is plastic. This is neuroscience. This is fact. Neuroplasticity means that the same brain that learned approval equals survival can learn something new, can learn that boundaries equal respect, that consistency matters more than intensity, that your needs are not negotiable, that someone being upset with you is not an emergency you must fix, that you can be kind without being consumed, that you can be compassionate without being destroyed. But first, you have to understand that none of this was your fault. Not the wiring, not the conditioning, not the trauma responses, not the people-pleasing, not the inability to say no, not the staying too long, not the giving too much. None of it. You were doing the best you could with the information and resources and nervous system you had at the time. You were trying to survive, trying to be loved, trying to matter, and toxic people took advantage of that trying. They saw your openness and called it weakness. They saw your empathy and called it opportunity. They saw your loyalty and called it permission to treat you however they wanted, because you would always come back. But you are not coming back anymore. Not because you have become hard or cold or cynical. Because you have become wise. Because you finally understand that the problem was never that you cared too much. The problem was that you cared for people who cared too little. And that imbalance, that constant pouring into cups that had holes in the bottom, that is what broke you. Not your capacity to love. The absence of reciprocity. You are ready now, ready to rewire, ready to learn new patterns, ready to build immunity. Understanding why you were vulnerable is the foundation. But understanding alone does not create immunity. Immunity is built through stages, through progression, through a journey that cannot be rushed or skipped. You do not go from unconscious susceptibility to energetic immunity in a single revelation. You move through levels, each one necessary, each one teaching you something the next stage requires. This is not a light switch. This is a metamorphosis. And like all metamorphosis, it happens in phases that cannot be bypassed without collapsing the entire transformation. Stage 1 is where most people live for years without realizing it. This is unconscious susceptibility. Why, you do not even know you are being drained. You think this is what relationships are, what family is, what friendship looks like, what love feels like. The exhaustion seems normal. The anxiety seems like your personality. The walking on eggshells seems like being considerate. The constant accommodation seems like being a good partner or friend or child. You have no frame of reference for anything different. So when someone treats you poorly, you do not recognize it as poor treatment. You recognize it as Tuesday. In this stage, you make excuses that sound like empathy. They are going through a hard time. They did not mean it that way. They have a stressful job. They had a difficult childhood. They are just passionate. They are just honest. They are just going through something. You have a reason for everything, a justification, a way to make their behavior make sense, so you do not have to face the possibility that someone you care about is hurting you and doesn't care enough to stop. You feel tired a lot in this stage, but you do not connect the tiredness to specific people. You think you need more sleep, more exercise, more vitamins, more self-care. You never consider that maybe you need fewer toxic people draining your energy like parasites. You accommodate endlessly. You adjust yourself constantly. You are always the one compromising, apologizing, trying harder. And you think this is what it means to be a good person, to be mature, to be understanding. The breakthrough that moves you to stage 2 usually comes as a shock. Someone says something. You read something. You witness a healthy relationship and realize yours looks nothing like it. Something cracks, and suddenly you see. This is painful awareness, and it feels exactly like the name suggests. Painful. You begin to recognize the patterns, the cycles, the way certain people in your life only show up when they need something, the way your boundaries are constantly violated, the way your feelings are consistently minimized. You see it now, and you cannot unsee it. And the seeing is excruciating. This stage is brutal because you have awareness, but not yet power. You know it is wrong, but you do not know how to make it stop. You can identify the problem, but you cannot solve it. You are like someone who just learned they have been eating poison, but does not yet know how to stop ingesting it. You feel trapped, helpless, angry at yourself for not seeing sooner, angry at them for doing this to you, angry at the world for teaching you that this was acceptable. In stage 2, you start having conversations in your head that never happen in real life. You rehearse boundaries at 3 a.m. You imagine finally telling them how you really feel. You script out responses to behaviors you know will happen again. But when the moment comes, when you are actually face to face with them, all of that preparation evaporates. You accommodate again. You stay silent again. You let it slide again. And then you hate yourself for it. The self-loathing in this stage is intense because you know better now. But knowing better has not yet translated into doing better. People get stuck in stage 2 for years, sometimes decades, because awareness without action is torture. But action feels impossible. The guilt is overwhelming. The fear is paralyzing. What if you are wrong? What if you are overreacting? What if setting a boundary destroys the relationship? What if they are right and you are too sensitive? What if nobody else will love you? What if you end up alone? These questions circle like vultures, and they keep you frozen, aware but immobile, seeing but not moving. The shift to stage 3 happens when the pain of staying becomes greater than the fear of leaving, when you finally reach a point where you cannot do this anymore, where one more violation, one more dismissal, one more moment of feeling small and unimportant tips the scale. This is active defense, and it is messy, it is uncomfortable, it is awkward and guilty and scary, but it is necessary. This is where you start setting boundaries, actually setting them, not just thinking about them, not just wishing for them, actually saying no, actually removing yourself from situations, actually enforcing consequences. In stage 3, your boundaries feel like aggression because you have spent so long having none. Saying no feels cruel because you have said yes to everything for years. Prioritizing yourself feels selfish because you have been trained to prioritize everyone else. The guilt is enormous. The pushback is immediate, because the people who benefited from your lack of boundaries do not want you to have them now. They will test you. They will escalate. They will cry or rage or guilt or manipulate. They will try every tool that worked before, and some of those tools will still work. You will cave sometimes. You will backtrack. You will apologize for boundaries you should not apologize for. But you will also hold firm sometimes. And those times, those moments of actually enforcing a boundary, even though it feels terrible, those are the reps that build your immunity. This stage is about practice, about repetition, about learning that you can set a boundary and survive the discomfort that follows. That you can say no and the relationship will either adapt or end, and either outcome is better than slowly eroding yourself. You learn that guilt is not the same as wrongdoing, that someone being upset with you is not evidence you did something wrong, that you are allowed to protect yourself even if it disappoints someone else. These lessons do not arrive as intellectual concepts. They arrive through lived experience, through doing the hard thing and discovering you do not die from it. Stage 4 is where the real transformation becomes visible. This is natural discernment. The boundaries that felt effortful in stage 3 start to become automatic. You can spot toxic behavior within the first few interactions. You do not need weeks or months or years to figure out if someone is safe. You can feel it, not as anxiety that you talk yourself out of, as information that you trust. Your instincts, which were overridden for so long, start to come back online. And you listen to them now. You honor them. When something feels off, you do not need to build a case for why. You just know, and you act accordingly. In this stage, you respond to toxicity without drama or doubt. Someone crosses a boundary, and you address it immediately, calmly, without over-explaining or defending your right to have limits. You do not engage in circular arguments. You do not defend your reality. You state your boundary. You enforce the consequence. You move on. If they respect it, the relationship continues. If they do not, the relationship ends. There is no agonizing, no second-guessing, no wondering if you are being too harsh. You have learned that people who respect you do not make you question whether you deserve respect. You also start to notice something interesting in stage 4. Healthy people do not find your boundaries threatening. They do not push back. They do not test to see if you really mean it. They just respect it. Easily, naturally, without drama. And this teaches you something crucial, that the right people do not require constant defense, that healthy relationships do not feel like work, that you have been confusing difficulty with depth, struggle with meaning, chaos with connection. Real connection is easy. It is peaceful. It is reciprocal. And once you experience that, once you know what it feels like to be with people who actually respect you, you cannot go back to tolerating disrespect. Your tolerance for toxicity drops to near zero, not because you have become judgmental, because you have become discerning. Stage 5 is the destination. This is energetic immunity, and it is almost magical to experience. Toxic people simply stop showing up in your life, not because you are avoiding everyone, not because you have become a hermit, because you have fundamentally changed the signal you emit. You no longer radiate the specific frequency that toxic people hunt for, the uncertainty, the over-responsibility, the desperate need to be needed, the willingness to sacrifice yourself to be accepted. All of that is gone. You have become someone who knows their worth, who trusts their instincts, who prioritizes their peace. And toxic people can sense this. They can feel that you are no longer a viable target, so they do not approach. Or if they do approach, they leave quickly when they realize you are not going to play the games that used to work. In stage 5, you are not trying to have boundaries. You are boundaries. It is not something you do. It is something you are. Your entire way of being in the world has shifted. You do not tolerate disrespect because disrespect is not even offered. You do not have to defend your reality because people do not challenge it. You do not have to prove your worth because you do not surround yourself with people who question it. You have built a life, an identity, an energetic field that is simply incompatible with dysfunction. The way a healthy body rejects a virus, you reject toxicity. Automatically, without effort, without thought. This does not mean you never encounter difficult people. You do. Everyone does. But you recognize them immediately. You respond appropriately. You do not get pulled in. You do not try to fix them or save them or prove yourself to them. You observe. You assess. You decide if this person belongs in your life. And if they do not, you remove them without guilt or drama. You have learned that not everyone deserves access to you, that your time and energy and peace are precious, that you are allowed to be selective about who gets close, that boundaries are not walls keeping people out. They are filters ensuring only the right people get in. The journey through these stages is not linear. You will move forward and slide back. You will have moments of clarity in stage 2 and moments of doubt in stage 4. You will enforce boundaries beautifully one day and cave to guilt the next. This is normal. This is part of the process. Growth is not a straight line. It is a spiral. You keep coming back to the same lessons at different levels of understanding, each time a little wiser, a little stronger, a little more yourself. What matters is the direction. Are you moving toward immunity or away from it? Are you learning from your mistakes or repeating them? Are you listening to your discomfort or overriding it? Are you choosing people who choose you or chasing people who barely see you? These questions will guide you through the stages. And if you keep asking them, keep answering honestly, keep choosing yourself even when it is hard, you will arrive. At stage 5, at immunity, at the life you have been building toward with every difficult boundary and every moment of choosing your peace over someone else's comfort, you will arrive. And it will be worth every uncomfortable step. Knowing the stages of immunity gives you the map. But maps do not move you forward. Action does. Practice does. Having a specific, repeatable system that you can deploy in real time, in real situations, with real people who have real access to your vulnerabilities. This is that system. 3 steps. Simple enough to remember in moments of stress. Sophisticated enough to protect you from even the most skilled manipulators. This is the recognition and redirect system. And with practice, it becomes as automatic as breathing. Step 1 is pattern recognition. This is where immunity begins, with your ability to see toxic behavior early, within the first 3 interactions, before attachment forms, before investment deepens, before you have given them enough of yourself that leaving feels like losing part of yourself. You are learning to read people the way a doctor reads symptoms, not with judgment, with assessment, with the understanding that certain patterns predict certain outcomes, and if you catch those patterns early, you can protect yourself before the damage begins. The red flags are consistent. Toxic people follow scripts. Learn the scripts and you will recognize them instantly. First flag. They love bomb, then withdraw. They come on incredibly strong at the beginning. They text constantly. They want to see you all the time. They share deep emotions and create intense intimacy very quickly. They make you feel like you have found something rare and special. Then suddenly, they pull back. They become distant, cold, unavailable, and you are left confused, chasing the feeling they created, wondering what you did wrong. This is intentional. This is a test. They are training you to associate their attention with relief and their withdrawal with panic. They are creating an addiction to their presence. Second flag. They share secrets too soon. Real intimacy builds slowly. It earns trust over time through consistent behavior. Toxic people skip this process. They tell you their deepest traumas, their darkest secrets, their most vulnerable stories within days or weeks of meeting you. This feels like connection. It feels like they trust you. But what it actually is a trap. They are creating false intimacy, making you feel special because they chose you to confide in. And now you feel responsible for their pain. You feel obligated to help, to stay, to prove you are worthy of the trust they gave you. Except they did not give you trust. They gave you a burden disguised as closeness. Third flag. They have only enemies or saints in their story with no nuance. Listen to how they talk about other people. If everyone in their past wronged them, if every ex is crazy, if every former friend betrayed them, if every boss was incompetent, this is information. Not about those people. About them. Healthy people have complex stories. Some relationships ended mutually. Some people they still respect, even though things did not work out. They can acknowledge their own role in conflicts. They can see nuance. Toxic people cannot, or will not. They are always the victim, always the hero, always the misunderstood one. And if everyone in their past is a villain, you will be too. Eventually, when you stop serving their narrative. Fourth flag. They test your boundaries playfully before violating them seriously. They make a joke that crosses a line and watch your reaction. They push a small boundary and see if you enforce it. They ask for a small favor that is slightly unreasonable. These are not accidents. These are tests. They are measuring your tolerance, your willingness to prioritize their comfort over yours, your fear of being seen as difficult. If you laugh off the inappropriate joke, if you grant the unreasonable favor, if you let the small boundary violation slide, they have learned something valuable. That you can be pushed and they will push harder next time. Fifth flag. They make you feel responsible for their emotions. Their mood depends on you. Their happiness is your job. Their disappointment is your failure. They do not say this directly. They show it. Through sulking when you are not available. Through guilt when you prioritize yourself. Through praise when you sacrifice. They are training you to manage their emotional state, to prioritize their feelings over yours, to believe that your boundaries hurt them, that your needs are selfish, that love means erasing yourself to make space for them. This is not love. This is emotional hostage-taking. If you see 2 or more of these flags in the first 3 interactions, you have enough information. You do not need more data. You do not need to give them more chances. You do not need to wait and see if they change. Patterns established early rarely shift. And even if they do shift, it is not your job to wait around, hoping. This is pattern recognition. You see the signs, you note them, you trust them, and you move to step 2. Step 2 is emotional redirection. The moment you recognize the pattern, you redirect your emotional investment away from them, back toward yourself. This is crucial, because the instinct, the deeply wired, people-pleasing instinct, is to focus on them, to ask, how can I help them? How can I fix this? How can I make this work? What do they need from me? These questions give your power away. They make you responsible for someone else's dysfunction. They turn you into a project manager for someone else's emotional life. Instead, you ask different questions. Why am I drawn to fixing this? What wound in me is activated by their need? What am I trying to prove by staying? What boundary did I fail to maintain that allowed this dynamic to develop? These questions redirect focus. They make you the subject of your own life again, instead of the supporting character in theirs. You are not asking these questions to blame yourself. You are asking them to understand yourself, to see the pattern in you that keeps attracting or tolerating this pattern in others. When something goes wrong, when they hurt you or disappoint you or violate a boundary, the default question is, what did I do wrong? This question assumes you are the problem, that if you had just been better, clearer, more patient, more understanding, this would not have happened. But the better question is, what boundary did I fail to maintain? This question assumes you have limits that deserve respect, that when someone crosses those limits, the issue is not your sensitivity. The issue is their disrespect. This shift in questioning changes everything. It moves you from shame to clarity, from self-blame to self-protection. Emotional redirection is a practice. Every time you catch yourself obsessing over their behavior, you redirect to yours. Every time you catch yourself trying to decode their mixed signals, you redirect to your clear signals. Every time you catch yourself wondering why they treat you this way, you redirect to why you accept being treated this way. This is not about them anymore. This is about you, about your patterns, your choices, your power, and the more you redirect, the less power they have. Because you are no longer giving them the one thing toxic people need most, your focused attention and emotional energy. Step 3 is behavioral enforcement. This is where the system becomes real, where internal shifts translate into external action. You implement clear, calm consequences without explanation or negotiation. This is the hardest step, because it requires you to do something that feels mean, to set a limit and hold it even when they push back, even when they demand reasons, even when they make you feel like you are the one being unreasonable. Toxic people will demand explanations. They will ask why. Why are you pulling back? Why are you being distant? Why are you setting this boundary? And this is a trap, because reasons become arguments. Arguments become manipulation, and suddenly you are defending your right to protect yourself. You are justifying your boundaries as if boundaries require justification. They do not. You do not owe anyone access to you. You do not owe anyone an explanation for why you are choosing yourself. You just need to state the boundary and enforce the consequence. Here is what behavioral enforcement looks like in practice. In dating, someone shows up late repeatedly without apology. You do not lecture them about respect. You do not explain why lateness bothers you. You simply stop making plans that require punctuality. You suggest meeting places near you. You keep your schedule flexible so their lateness does not affect you. And if they ask why you are being distant, you say something brief. I am matching your level of investment. Or even simpler. This does not work for me. And you do not elaborate. You do not defend. You just state it and let the discomfort sit. In friendship, someone only reaches out when they need something. You stop being immediately available. You let calls go to voicemail. You respond to texts hours later instead of minutes. You say you are busy more often. You create distance gradually, calmly, without announcement. When they notice and ask what is wrong, you do not list their offenses. You say, I have been prioritizing relationships that feel reciprocal, or you say nothing. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. You are not obligated to manage their feelings about your boundaries. At work, someone takes credit for your ideas. You stop sharing ideas with them. You document your work more carefully. You go directly to leadership with your contributions instead of funneling them through this person. You do not confront them about what they did. You simply change your behavior to protect your interests. And if they notice the shift and try to pull you back in with charm or fake collaboration, you stay professional but distant. Short responses, longer delays, less access. You are not punishing them. You are protecting yourself. In family, someone criticizes your life choices every time you talk. You stop sharing details. You keep conversations surface level. You visit less often. You leave sooner. You do not explain why, because explaining gives them ammunition, gives them a chance to tell you that you are too sensitive, that they were just trying to help, that you are being dramatic. You just create distance. And if they demand to know why things feel different, you stay vague. I have needed some space. I have been busy. I am working on some things. You do not owe them a detailed account of how they hurt you. You just owe yourself protection. The key to behavioral enforcement is consistency. You do not set a boundary and then cave when they push. You do not create distance and then rush back when they love bomb. You hold the line, calmly, quietly, without drama, because drama gives them an opening. Drama makes you the problem, but calm, consistent enforcement is undeniable. It communicates that something has fundamentally changed, that you are no longer available for dynamics that drain you, that access to you is now earned, not assumed. This system works. Pattern recognition gives you early detection. Emotional redirection gives you internal power. Behavioral enforcement gives you external protection. Together, they form a shield, not a wall, a shield. You are not closing yourself off to everyone. You are becoming discerning about who gets close. And with practice, with repetition, with using this system over and over in small situations and large ones, it becomes automatic. You no longer have to think about it. You see the pattern, You redirect your focus. You enforce the boundary. Smoothly, naturally. The way your immune system fights off a virus without you having to consciously direct the process. This is how you become immune. Not by avoiding people, by recognizing poison before you swallow it, and refusing to swallow it even when someone is insisting it is medicine. The recognition and redirect system is your foundation. But foundation alone does not make you unshakable. You need reinforcements, additional tools that support immunity from different angles. Think of these as layers of protection, each one adding depth to your defense, each one giving you options when the primary system is challenged, because toxic people are adaptive. They learn, they adjust their strategies, and you need to be more adaptive than they are. The Grey Rock method is your first advanced tool. This is for situations where you cannot create full distance, where the toxic person is a co-worker you see daily, a family member you encounter at gatherings, a co-parent you are legally bound to interact with. You cannot remove them completely. So instead, you become profoundly uninteresting. You become a grey rock, boring, unreactive, emotionally flat. Toxic people feed on emotional reactions. They thrive on drama, on getting a rise out of you, on knowing they can affect your emotional state. They ask provocative questions. They make inflammatory statements. They share things designed to trigger you. And when you react, when you defend yourself or get upset or try to explain, you give them exactly what they want: your energy, your emotion, your engagement. The Grey Rock method removes their food source. Here is what this looks like in practice. They ask about your weekend. You say it was fine. They press for details. You say you did not do much. They try to bait you with criticism or judgment. You respond with or I see, or okay. No elaboration, no emotion, no defensiveness. Just bland, neutral, minimum engagement. They tell you about drama in their life, trying to pull you into their chaos. You say that sounds difficult, and then you say nothing else. You do not offer advice. You do not ask follow-up questions. You do not provide the audience they are seeking. This method works because it is deeply unsatisfying for them. They came looking for a reaction and got nothing. They tried to start a fire and you did not provide kindling. At first, they will escalate. They will try harder to get a response. They will say more outrageous things. They will accuse you of being cold or distant or not caring. And you stay grey. You stay rock. You do not defend your new demeanor. You do not explain. You just continue being uninteresting. And eventually, most of them move on. They find someone else who will give them the emotional charge they crave, because you are no longer a viable source. The energy audit is your second advanced tool. This is about tracking data, about becoming scientific about your relationships. You are going to start paying attention to how you feel before, during, and after spending time with specific people. Not in a vague way, in a concrete way. You are going to notice patterns, and you are going to make strategic decisions based on those patterns. Get a notebook or open a note in your phone. After each significant interaction, write down the person's name and how you feel. Do you feel energized or depleted? Peaceful or anxious? Clear or confused? Valued or diminished? Do this for 2 weeks. Just observe and record. Do not change anything yet. Just gather data. And at the end of 2 weeks, look at the pattern. Certain names will consistently appear next to words like drained, exhausted, anxious, small. Other names will consistently appear next to words like energized, peaceful, seen, valued. Now you have information, real information, not feelings you can talk yourself out of, not perceptions you can dismiss as sensitivity. Actual tracked data about who depletes you and who replenishes you. And now you make strategic decisions. The people who consistently deplete you get less access, less time, less energy. You are not punishing them. You are protecting your finite resources. You are treating your energy like the precious commodity it is, and you are investing it where it generates return rather than loss. The boundary script library is your third advanced tool. One of the reasons boundaries feel so hard is that you are trying to create language in real time while under pressure, while someone is pushing, while emotions are high, while your people-pleasing conditioning is screaming at you to just give in. The solution is to prepare your language in advance, to have scripts ready that do not require thought in the moment, that you can deploy automatically. Here are the core scripts you need. That does not work for me. Use this when someone suggests something you do not want to do. You do not need to explain why it does not work. You do not need to offer alternatives. You just state it. That does not work for me. And then you stop talking. Let the silence sit. Let them be uncomfortable with your boundary. I am not available for that. Use this when someone asks for something you cannot or will not provide. Your time, your money, your emotional labor. I am not available for that. Clear. Final. No room for negotiation. I have made my decision. Use this when someone is trying to change your mind, trying to argue you out of a choice you have already made. They will list reasons why you are wrong. They will try to convince you. And you repeat, calmly, I have made my decision. You do not debate. You do not defend. You just restate. I need to go now. Use this when you need to exit a conversation or situation. You do not need permission to leave. You do not need a good enough reason. You just state your need and act on it. I need to go now. And then you go. I will think about it. Use this when you need time to consider something without the pressure of an immediate answer. It buys you space. It prevents you from agreeing to things you will regret. And here is the important part. You do not owe them a follow-up. If they ask what you decided, you can say, I decided not to. And you do not explain further. These scripts become armor. The more you use them, the more natural they feel. The more automatic your boundaries become. The mirror test is your fourth advanced tool. This one is simple but devastating in its clarity. Ask yourself this question. Would I treat someone the way this person treats me? Would I cancel plans last minute without apology? Would I criticize their choices constantly? Would I only reach out when I needed something? Would I make them feel responsible for my emotions? Would I violate their boundaries repeatedly? If the answer is no, if you would never treat someone this way because you consider it disrespectful or unkind or selfish, then why are you accepting it? This question cuts through all the justifications, all the excuses, all the reasons you have constructed to explain why their behavior is okay. It forces you to see the double standard. You hold yourself to a standard of respect and kindness, but you do not require that same standard from them. Why? Because they are family? Because you have history? Because they have problems? None of these reasons justify accepting treatment you would never give. The mirror test makes this undeniable, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The future self visualization is your fifth advanced tool. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine yourself 5 years from now, the version of you that has done the work, that has built immunity, that has surrounded themselves with healthy relationships. What does that person look like? How do they carry themselves? How do they spend their time? who is in their life. And now ask the question, does this current relationship, this person who drains you, this dynamic that exhausts you, does it belong in that future? Does it align with the life you are building? Or is it a relic of who you used to be, of patterns you are outgrowing? This visualization gives you perspective. It lifts you out of the immediate discomfort of setting boundaries and shows you the destination. The person you are becoming does not tolerate disrespect, does not overfunction in relationships, does not sacrifice peace for connection. And if this current relationship cannot exist in that future without you shrinking or suffering, then it does not belong in your present either. You are not being mean by letting it go. You are being honest about the trajectory you are on, and some people will not be able to come with you. That is not your failure. That is reality. Beyond tools, you need people. Real people. Healthy people. A council of relationships that model what functional connection actually looks like. Because if every relationship you have is dysfunctional, you lose perspective. You start to believe that chaos is normal, that walking on eggshells is just how relationships work, that everyone is this exhausting. But they are not, and you need proof of that. Living proof. Start building a council, even if it is small, even if it starts with one person, a friend who respects your no without making you defend it, a mentor who celebrates your growth without jealousy, a colleague who collaborates without competing, a family member who accepts you without trying to change you. These people are mirrors. They reflect your worth back to you. They demonstrate what respect looks like, what reciprocity feels like, what ease means in relationship. And the more time you spend with them, the less tolerance you have for anything less. These healthy relationships recalibrate your normal. They show you that you do not have to work this hard, that boundaries can be easy, that the right people do not require constant management, that love and respect and consideration can be given freely without strings or conditions. And once you know this, once you feel it in your body, toxic relationships become intolerable. Not because you have become judgmental, because you have experienced better, and you cannot unknow what better feels like. Finally, learn the skill of emotional compartmentalization. This is crucial, because you will encounter people, especially family, where complete disconnection feels impossible or undesirable. And you need to know that you can love someone from a distance, that you can wish them well without giving them access, that you can acknowledge their pain without making it your responsibility. These are not contradictions. These are advanced relationship skills that most people never learn. You can love your mother and not answer every phone call. You can care about your brother and not fund his poor decisions. You can have compassion for your friend's struggles and not be their unpaid therapist. You can recognize someone's suffering and still maintain boundaries that protect your peace. Love does not require proximity. Care does not require sacrifice. Compassion does not require consumption of yourself. Compartmentalization means you hold multiple truths at once. I love them, and they are not good for me. I understand their pain, and I am not the solution. I wish them healing, and I cannot be part of that process. These truths can coexist, and when you learn to hold them simultaneously without collapsing into guilt or obligation, you become truly free. Free to care without carrying. Free to love without losing yourself. Free to maintain connection on your terms rather than theirs. These advanced tools, these reinforcements, they work together. Grey rock protects you in unavoidable situations. Energy Audit gives you data for decisions. Boundary Script Library gives you language. Mirror Test gives you clarity. Future Self-Visualization gives you direction. Healthy relationships give you models. Compartmentalization gives you permission. Layer them together, and you become someone toxic people cannot penetrate. Not because you have built walls, because you have built wisdom. And wisdom, true wisdom, is the most powerful protection there is. Tools and techniques give you the ability to defend yourself, but defense is reactive. It requires constant vigilance, constant assessment, constant protection against intrusion. What you need now is something stronger, something proactive. You need to build a life so full, so aligned, so purposeful that toxic people have no cracks to slip through. Not because you are defending against them, because there is simply no space for them, no vulnerability for them to exploit, no emptiness for them to fill with their chaos. This is the shift from defense to architecture, from protecting yourself to constructing yourself, from keeping toxic people out to building a life they cannot penetrate because it is already complete, already whole, already so intentionally designed that dysfunction would disrupt everything you have created. And you will not allow that disruption. Not because you are being defensive, because you are being protective of something valuable. Your peace, your purpose, your carefully constructed life. Start with routines, non-negotiable routines, the kind that protect your energy before the world has a chance to deplete it. Most people wake up and immediately hand their attention to everyone else. They check their phone. They scroll through messages and emails and notifications. They let other people's needs, other people's urgency, other people's chaos flood in before they have even centered themselves. And then they wonder why they feel reactive all day, why they feel behind, why they feel like they are managing everyone else's priorities instead of their own. Your morning ritual is sacred. This is where you build your foundation for the day. Before you check your phone, before you respond to anyone, before you let the external world make demands, you center yourself. This looks different for everyone. Maybe it is 10 minutes of silence. Maybe it is meditation or prayer or journaling. Maybe it is movement, a walk, yoga, stretching. Maybe it is reading something that aligns you with your values. Maybe it is simply sitting with coffee and letting your mind settle before the chaos begins. The specific practice matters less than the commitment to it. This time is yours, non-negotiable. It does not matter if someone texted you urgently. It does not matter if there is drama that needs managing. It does not matter if people are upset that you are not immediately available. You take this time, every single day. Because this is how you remember who you are before the world tells you who to be. This is how you access your own truth before other people's narratives drown it out. This is how you stay grounded when everything around you is unstable. Your evening practice is equally important. This is where you clear the residue of the day, where you process what happened, where you release what you absorbed from others, so it does not become part of you. Again, this looks different for everyone. Maybe it is a physical practice, a shower where you imagine washing away the energy of the day, a run that burns off tension. Maybe it is creative, writing, drawing, music. Maybe it is reflective, journaling about what you learned, what you are grateful for, where you held boundaries and where you need to strengthen them. The purpose of this practice is to prevent accumulation, to keep other people's emotions and energy and chaos from building up in your system. Because if you do not clear it daily, it compounds, and eventually you are carrying so much residue from others that you lose touch with what is actually yours. You cannot tell the difference between your anxiety and theirs, your needs and theirs, your reality and theirs. The evening practice keeps this separation clear. It reminds you what belongs to you and what you need to release. Weekly check-ins are where you assess patterns. Every week you sit down with yourself. You look at where your time went, where your energy went, who got access to you, and why. This is not about judgment. This is about data. Did you spend time on relationships that nourish you or ones that deplete you? Did you invest in your own goals or manage other people's crises? Did you honor your boundaries or cave to pressure? Did you act from intention or reaction? You look at the week honestly, and you make adjustments. If you gave too much time to someone draining, you reduce access next week. If you neglected something important to you, you prioritize it going forward. If you notice a pattern where a certain person always triggers stress or guilt or anxiety, you create more distance. This weekly practice keeps you accountable, keeps you intentional, keeps you building the life you want instead of defaulting to the life others demand. Environment design matters more than most people realize. Your physical space affects your mental boundaries. If your home is chaotic, cluttered, full of reminders of toxic people or painful periods of your life, it undermines your immunity. Your environment should support the person you are becoming. It should feel like sanctuary, like a place where you can breathe, where you are not managing anyone else's needs or emotions, where you can simply be. Look around your space right now. What does it reflect? Does it feel peaceful or stressful? Does it support your routines or make them harder? Are there items that carry heavy emotional weight, gifts from people who hurt you, photos from times you are trying to move past? You do not need to throw everything away. But you do need to be intentional. Your space should reinforce your immunity, not undermine it. The same applies to what you consume, the music you listen to, the shows you watch, the content you scroll through. All of it affects your internal state. If you are constantly consuming content about drama, about toxic relationships, about chaos and dysfunction, you are training your nervous system to expect and even seek those patterns. If you are listening to music that reinforces pain or victimhood or hopelessness, you are programming those emotional states into your default setting. Choose intentionally. Choose content that reinforces the person you are becoming, that models health, that demonstrates boundaries, that celebrates growth, that reflects the life you are building. This does not mean everything has to be positive or uplifting. It means being selective, being aware, recognizing that everything you consume is either supporting your immunity or eroding it. There is no neutral. Everything is input, and input shapes output. Meaningful work and creative expression are essential. When your life has purpose beyond managing other people's dysfunction, you become naturally resistant to distraction and drama, because you have something more important to do, something that matters to you, something that fulfills you in ways that toxic relationships never could. This is not about having a prestigious career. This is about having something that is yours, something you are building, something you care about. Maybe it is your career. Maybe it is a side project. Maybe it is art or writing or music. Maybe it is building a business or learning a skill or contributing to a cause you believe in. Maybe it is raising children or caring for animals or creating community. the specifics matter less than the fact that you have something that gives your life meaning beyond your relationships, something that requires your energy and attention and focus, something that toxic people would interfere with. And because you value this thing, you protect it. You protect your energy for it. You protect your time for it. And suddenly, toxic people are not just draining you. They are standing between you and something you care about. And that gives you clarity, gives you strength to say no. Preemptive boundaries are how you stay ahead of problems instead of reacting to them. This means deciding in advance what you will and will not tolerate. So when the moment comes, when someone tests a boundary or makes a demand or tries to manipulate, you are not making decisions in emotional vulnerability. You already decided. You are just executing the decision you made when you were calm and clear. Sit down when you are not in crisis, when no one is pressuring you, when you are thinking clearly, and make a list. What will you no longer tolerate in relationships? Write it down. Specifically, I will not tolerate being yelled at. I will not tolerate my boundaries being dismissed. I will not tolerate being made responsible for someone else's emotions. I will not tolerate chronic lateness without apology. I will not tolerate one-sided relationships where I am always giving. Write it all down, and then decide what the consequence is for each violation. Not as punishment, as protection. If someone yells at me, I leave the conversation immediately. If someone dismisses my boundary, I create distance. If someone makes me responsible for their emotions, I redirect them to appropriate support and reduce my involvement. If someone is chronically late, I stop making plans that require punctuality. If a relationship is one-sided, I match their level of investment instead of exceeding it. These are decisions made in advance. So when the situation arises, you do not have to think. You do not have to debate. You do not have to feel guilty. You just implement the consequence you already decided was appropriate. This removes the emotional weight from boundary enforcement. You are not being mean. You are following your own pre-established guidelines for how you allow yourself to be treated. Self-intimacy is the foundation beneath everything else. This is about knowing yourself so deeply, so thoroughly, that manipulation cannot work. Because you immediately recognize when someone's narrative contradicts your truth. Most people are strangers to themselves. They do not know what they actually feel versus what they have been told to feel. They do not know what they actually want versus what they have been conditioned to want. They do not know their own values, their own limits, their own truth, and this lack of self-knowledge makes them vulnerable. Because if you do not know yourself, someone else will tell you who you are. And if that someone is toxic, they will tell you a version of yourself that serves them. Self-intimacy is built through attention, through asking yourself questions and actually listening to the answers. How do I feel right now? Not how should I feel? How do I actually feel? What do I want in this situation? Not what would make everyone else happy. What do I actually want? What do I value? Not what have I been told to value. What actually matters to me? What are my limits? Not what limits are acceptable to others. What are my actual limits? You spend time with yourself, real time, not just existing in your own head while managing everyone else's needs, but actual intentional time where you are paying attention to yourself with the same care and curiosity you would pay to someone you love. You journal, you reflect, you notice patterns in your reactions and responses. You get to know your triggers, your wounds, your strengths, your needs. And the more you know yourself, the harder you are to manipulate. Because manipulation requires confusion, requires you doubting yourself. And when you know yourself this intimately, that doubt does not take hold. Someone tells you that you are too sensitive, and you know that is not true. Someone tells you that you are overreacting, and you know your reaction is proportional. Someone tells you that you are the problem, and you know exactly what you contributed and what you did not. Self-intimacy is immunity, because it makes you unshakable in your own truth. This is how you build a life toxic people cannot penetrate. Not through constant vigilance, through intentional construction, through routines that protect your energy, through environments that support your peace, through purpose that demands your focus, through preemptive boundaries that prevent crises, through self-knowledge that makes you manipulation-proof. You are not just defending anymore. You are building. And what you are building is too valuable, too aligned, too purposeful to allow dysfunction to disrupt it. This is long-term immunity. This is sustainable protection. This is the architecture of a life that belongs entirely to you. You have the tools now, the practices, the architecture, but there is something else you need. Something that strengthens everything else. You need to understand that what you have experienced is not weakness. It is not imagination. It is not sensitivity or overreaction or any of the other dismissive labels toxic people use to make you doubt yourself. What you have experienced is biology, neuroscience, psychology, documented, researched, verified science about how human brains and bodies respond to manipulation and dysfunction. And understanding this science does not just validate your experience, it empowers your transformation, because once you understand how your brain learned to be vulnerable, you can understand how to teach it to be immune. Start with neuroplasticity. This is the brain's ability to rewire itself based on experience. Your brain is not fixed. It is not permanent. It is constantly reshaping its neural pathways based on what you repeatedly do, think, and experience. Every time you set a boundary and hold it, even when it feels uncomfortable, you are building new neural pathways. Pathways that associate self-protection with safety rather than danger. Pathways that recognize boundary setting as care for yourself rather than cruelty to others. Pathways that make protection automatic rather than effortful. Think of it like learning to drive. At first, every action requires conscious thought. Check the mirror. Signal. Check the blind spot. Turn the wheel. It is exhausting. It takes all your focus, but you keep doing it. And eventually, your brain automates the process. You do not think about checking the mirror anymore. Your brain just does it. The neural pathway has been built through repetition. Boundary setting works the same way. The first 50 times you say no, it feels like pushing a boulder uphill. But you keep doing it. And somewhere around repetition, 51 or 100 or 200, depending on how deep the people-pleasing wiring goes, it shifts. Saying no becomes easier, more natural, eventually automatic. Your brain has built the pathway, and now protection doesn't require effort. It is simply how you operate. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. You do not need to set massive boundaries perfectly. You need to set small boundaries repeatedly. Each repetition strengthens the neural pathway. Each time you choose yourself, even in a minor situation, you are rewiring your threat detection system. Teaching your brain that self-protection is not dangerous, that other people's disappointment is not a threat to your survival, that you can say no and still be safe, still be loved, still be worthy. The brain learns through pattern recognition, and you are creating a new pattern, one repetition at a time. Polyvagal theory explains something crucial about how your nervous system responds to people and situations. Your nervous system has three primary states. Ventral vagal, which is the state of safety and connection, where you feel calm, open, able to engage authentically. Sympathetic, which is the state of fight or flight, where you feel activated, anxious, ready to defend or escape. And dorsal vagal, which is the state of shutdown, where you feel numb, disconnected, frozen. Your nervous system is constantly assessing safety, and it does this assessment beneath conscious awareness. Before your thinking brain can even articulate what is wrong, your body knows. This is why you can be in a conversation with someone and suddenly feel exhausted, even though nothing overtly bad happened. Your nervous system detected a threat, detected manipulation or dishonesty or emotional demand, and it shifted out of the ventral vagal state of safety into a protective state. This is not your imagination. This is your autonomic nervous system doing its job. The problem is that if you grew up in an environment where safety was inconsistent, your nervous system may have learned to interpret danger as normal, to stay in sympathetic activation constantly, or to default to dorsal shutdown because fight or flight never worked. But here is the remarkable thing. Your nervous system can learn new patterns. Through repeated experiences of actual safety, it can recalibrate. This is why building relationships with healthy people is so important. Why creating environments that support your peace matters. Why consistent boundaries change everything. You are not just changing your behavior. You are teaching your nervous system that safety is real, that connection does not require constant vigilance, that you can relax into relationship without waiting for the other shoe to drop. And over time, your nervous system learns to recognize the difference between true connection and manipulation. Not intellectually, somatically, in your body, as a felt sense that you trust before your mind can explain it. Attachment theory tells us that the patterns we learned in childhood about relationships are not permanent. Yes, if you grew up with inconsistent caregiving, you may have developed an anxious attachment style, constantly worried about abandonment, needing reassurance, hypervigilant about any sign of rejection, or you may have developed an avoidant attachment style, disconnected from your needs, uncomfortable with intimacy, self-reliant to the point of isolation. These patterns are real. They shape how you show up in relationships, but they are not destiny. There is a concept called earned security. This means that even if you didn't receive secure attachment in childhood, you can develop it in adulthood through consistent experiences of healthy relationship. Through therapy, through friendships with people who are reliably present, through romantic partners who respect your boundaries and meet your needs consistently, through your own practice of showing up for yourself with the same reliability you wish you had received. Earned security is real. It is documented. It is achievable. Your childhood attachment patterns created a template, but templates can be rewritten. Every time you experience a healthy boundary being respected, you add data to the new template. Every time you experience reciprocity, consistency, respect, you are building evidence that contradicts the old pattern. And eventually, the new template becomes stronger than the old one. You have earned your own security through intentional relationship choices and personal practice. And now you operate from that security instead of from the wound. Emotional contagion and mirror neurons explain why being around toxic people is not just emotionally draining, but physiologically draining. Mirror neurons are brain cells that fire both when you perform an action and when you observe someone else performing that action. They are part of how humans learn through observation, how empathy works, how we understand what others are feeling. But they also mean that when you are around someone who is anxious, your mirror neurons activate anxiety in you. When you are around someone who is angry, your system mirrors that anger. When you are around someone who is chaotic, your nervous system absorbs that chaos. This is not weakness. This is neurobiology. And it means that proximity to toxic people literally changes your physiology. Your cortisol levels rise, your heart rate increases, your immune system weakens, your sleep is disrupted, your capacity for rational thought decreases. This is why you cannot just think your way out of the effects of a toxic relationship. Why positive affirmations alone do not work. Why trying to be strong enough to not let them affect you is not a viable strategy. Because the effect is happening at a biological level, below conscious control. The only solution is distance, physical distance, energetic distance. Enough separation that your mirror neurons are not constantly firing in response to their dysfunction. This is not cruelty. This is biological necessity. You are not abandoning them. You are protecting your own physiology from dysregulation. Intermittent reinforcement explains why toxic relationships can feel more intense, more compelling, more addictive than healthy ones. This is basic behavioral psychology. When a reward comes consistently, the behavior stabilizes, but the emotional intensity is moderate. When a reward comes unpredictably, the behavior intensifies, and the emotional investment skyrockets. This is why gambling is addictive, why slot machines work, why you will pull that lever over and over, hoping for the payout, even though you lose most of the time. Because the occasional win creates a dopamine response that consistent reward never could. Toxic people are slot machines. They give you just enough kindness to keep you hoping, just enough affection to keep you trying, just enough glimpses of the person they could be to keep you invested in the person they are not. And your brain, responding to this intermittent reinforcement, becomes obsessed. You think about them constantly. You analyze every interaction. You try to figure out the pattern, the formula, the magic combination of words or actions that will make them show up consistently as the good version. But there's no formula. The inconsistency is the point. It keeps you hooked, keeps you trying, keeps you believing that if you just do it right, you will earn the consistent love you are craving. Healthy relationships feel boring by comparison. Because the reinforcement is consistent. They show up the same way every time. Their kindness is predictable. Their respect is reliable. And your brain, trained on intermittent reinforcement, does not get that dopamine spike, does not get that obsessive quality. You think something is wrong. You think you do not have chemistry. What you do not have is intermittent reinforcement. What you do not have is the anxiety that you have been mistaking for attraction. And understanding this mechanism breaks the spell. Because now you know. The intensity is not love, it is addiction. And like all addictions, the solution is not moderation. It is stopping the behavior that triggers the addictive response. It is choosing the consistent over the intense, the reliable over the exciting, the healthy over the dramatic. Trauma bonding takes intermittent reinforcement further. This happens when the same person who hurts you is also the person who soothes you, when the source of your pain is also the source of your comfort. This creates a psychological bond that is incredibly difficult to break, because your nervous system learns to associate them with both threat and safety, with both pain and relief, and the brain prioritizes the relief more than it weighs the pain. So you stay, you go back, you forgive, you give another chance, not because you are weak, because your nervous system is doing exactly what it was designed to do, seeking relief from pain. And if the person causing the pain is also occasionally providing relief, your system bonds to them as a source of safety, even though they are the source of danger. Breaking a trauma bond requires understanding this mechanism, recognizing that the relief you feel when they are kind is not evidence that they are good for you. It is evidence that your nervous system is responding to intermittent reinforcement and the cycle of pain and relief. The way to break it is to find other sources of relief, other sources of safety, to give your nervous system evidence that you do not need them to feel okay. That relief can come from yourself, from healthy people, from practices and environments that consistently support you. And as you build those alternative sources, the trauma bond weakens. The pull diminishes, until one day you realize you do not need them anymore. Not for relief, not for safety, not for anything, because you have become your own source, and you have surrounded yourself with people who add to that source instead of depleting it. All of this is science, documented, researched, verified. Your experience of being drained by toxic people is not in your head. It is in your neurons, your nervous system, your attachment patterns, your mirror neurons, your dopamine response, your trauma bonds. Understanding this removes shame, removes the question of why you let it happen, why you stayed so long, why you kept going back. You were responding to biological and psychological mechanisms that are powerful and deeply wired. You were not weak. You were human. And now, armed with understanding, you can work with these mechanisms instead of against them. You can use neuroplasticity to rewire. Use polyvagal awareness to listen to your body. Use attachment theory to build earned security. Use knowledge of mirror neurons to protect your physiology through distance. Use understanding of intermittent reinforcement to recognize addiction disguised as love. Use awareness of trauma, bonding to break cycles that kept you trapped. This is not just theory. This is the science of your liberation, and it is on your side. The science validates your experience. The tools give you capability. The architecture gives you foundation. But none of it matters if you cannot hold your ground when the pressure comes. And the pressure will come. This is not pessimism. This is preparation. Because immunity is not built in calm moments when no one is testing you. Immunity is built in the fire, when toxic people realize you have changed, when they escalate, when circumstances force proximity, when your empathy screams at you to abandon your boundaries and rescue someone who is drowning. This is where theory meets reality. This is where you discover if your immunity is real or just an idea you like. The parent scenario. Holidays are approaching. Thanksgiving, Christmas, family gatherings where your presence is expected. And one of your parents is toxic. Maybe they criticize you constantly. Maybe they create drama. Maybe they play favorites or guilt trip or turn every gathering into a performance of their martyrdom. You have set boundaries. You have reduced contact. But now there is a holiday, and with it comes pressure. From them, from other family members, from your own guilt, from the part of you that still hopes maybe this time will be different. Maybe they will respect your boundaries. Maybe the magic of the holiday will transform them into the parent you always needed. Here is what you do. You decide in advance what you can tolerate and for how long. Not what you should tolerate, what you actually can without losing your peace or your progress. Maybe you go for 2 hours instead of the whole day. Maybe you stay at a hotel instead of in their home. Maybe you bring a friend who understands the dynamic and can be your exit strategy. Maybe you decide not to go at all and face the fallout with support systems in place. There is no right answer. There is only your answer, based on your capacity, your bandwidth, your assessment of whether limited contact is possible or if any contact will undo your progress. If you decide to go, you use the grey rock method. You keep conversations surface level. You do not share anything personal that can be used against you later. You do not engage in debates about your choices. When they criticize, you use your scripts. That is one perspective. Or I have made my decision about that. Or I am not discussing this today. You do not defend. You do not explain. You redirect or you exit, and you give yourself permission to leave early, to step outside when you need space, to protect yourself even if it makes them upset. Their upset is not your emergency. Their disappointment is not your responsibility. You show up to the extent you can, and you leave when staying would cost too much. The boss scenario. Your boss is toxic. They take credit for your work. They micromanage. They create impossible standards, and then criticize you for not meeting them. They undermine your confidence systematically, and you need the job, the income, the health insurance. You cannot just quit. So what do? You document everything. Every idea you contribute, you send a follow-up email summarizing it. Every project you complete, you keep records. You create a paper trail that proves your contributions. You stop giving your boss ammunition. You keep interactions professional and brief. You do not share personal information. You do not seek their approval or validation. And you start planning your exit, even if it takes a year, even if it takes 2. You update your resume. You network. You apply to other positions. You save money. You build skills that make you more marketable. Because staying in a toxic work environment while feeling trapped is soul-destroying, but staying in a toxic work environment while actively working toward leaving is survivable. The difference is agency, the knowledge that this is temporary, that you are building toward something better, that every day you stay is a choice you are making strategically, not a trap you are stuck in helplessly. The co-parent scenario. You share custody with someone toxic. You cannot cut contact. You are legally bound to interact, to communicate about schedules and medical decisions and school events, and they use every interaction as an opportunity to manipulate or criticize or create drama. Here is what you do. You communicate only through text or email. Never phone calls unless absolutely necessary. Because written communication creates a record and removes the real-time emotional manipulation. You keep messages brief and focused only on the children. You do not respond to bait. They try to start an argument about something unrelated. You do not engage. You respond only to the logistics. Pickup time confirmed. Or I will send the medical forms tomorrow. That is it. You use parallel parenting instead of co-parenting. Co-parenting requires cooperation and communication and mutual respect. Parallel parenting acknowledges that those things are not possible. So instead, you each parent during your time without requiring the other's input on every decision. You establish clear boundaries about what requires joint discussion, usually only major medical or educational decisions, and everything else you handle independently. You stop trying to get them to parent the way you parent. You stop trying to control what happens during their time. You focus only on what you can control: your time, your home, your relationship with your children, and you teach your children, age appropriately, that different homes have different rules, that they are not responsible for adult conflicts, that both parents love them even if the parents cannot get along with each other. The crisis scenario. Someone in your life is in crisis. Real crisis. Medical emergency, financial disaster, mental health crisis. And every empathetic cell in your body is screaming that you should help, that you should drop everything, that this is when they need you most. But this person is also toxic. They have drained you repeatedly. They have violated your boundaries. They have taken advantage of your kindness. And now you are faced with a choice. Do you help? Do you maintain your boundary? How do you navigate this without becoming a monster? Here is the truth. You can acknowledge their suffering without making it your mission. You can hope they heal without being the healer. Compassionate detachment is a real skill. It means you can care about their well-being while recognizing that you are not equipped to be their primary support. You can point them toward appropriate resources: professional help, crisis hotlines, other people in their life who have not been drained by them, community services. You can offer limited, specific help that does not require you to abandon your boundaries. I can drive you to the emergency room, but I cannot stay. I can send information about financial assistance programs, but I cannot give you money. I can listen for 20 minutes, but I cannot be your therapist. You set parameters that protect you while offering what you genuinely can give without resentment. And you accept that they may be angry. They may accuse you of abandoning them in their time of need. They may tell others that you are heartless. And you hold your boundary anyway, because helping from an empty cup helps no one, because sacrificing your stability doesn't create theirs, because you have learned the hard way that some people will drain every resource you offer and still need more. And at some point, for your own survival, you have to say, I cannot. Not I will not. I cannot. And mean it. Now let's talk about extinction bursts. This is a term from behavioral psychology. When a behavior that previously got a reward suddenly stops getting that reward, the behavior intensifies before it stops. A child who always got candy by throwing a tantrum will throw bigger tantrums when the candy stops coming. A rat that got food by pressing a lever will press it frantically when the food stops appearing. And toxic people who got access to you by pushing boundaries will push harder when the boundaries suddenly appear. They will escalate. This is predictable. This is not evidence that your boundaries are wrong. This is evidence that your boundaries are working. They are cycling through their entire playbook, trying to find the strategy that will make you cave. First comes charm. They are suddenly nice, apologetic. They say everything you have wanted to hear. They promise change. They love bomb. They remind you of the good times. They make you doubt whether you were overreacting, whether they are really that bad, whether you should give them another chance. When charm does not work, they escalate to rage. They yell. They insult. They tell you that you are the problem, that you are too sensitive, too rigid, too unforgiving. They make you the villain. They try to make you feel so uncomfortable, so attacked, that you will back down just to make it stop. When rage does not work, they shift to victimhood. They cry. They tell you how much you are hurting them, how much they need you. how you are abandoning them. They make you feel guilty. They weaponize your empathy. They present themselves as so wounded by your boundaries that maintaining those boundaries feels cruel. When victimhood does not work, they make threats. They will tell everyone what a terrible person you are. They will cut you out of the will. They will keep the kids from you. They will ruin your reputation. They will hurt themselves, and it will be your fault. The threats are designed to scare you back into compliance, to make the consequences of your boundary seem worse than the consequences of having no boundary. And here is what you need to know. Most of these threats are empty, and even the ones that are not, you survive them. You survive being talked about. You survive being cut off financially. You survive their attempts to damage your reputation. Because the alternative, continuing to let them damage you directly, is worse. You will feel guilt. This is normal. You have been conditioned to feel responsible for other people's emotions, to believe that their discomfort is your fault, to think that good people do not make others upset. But guilt is not truth. Guilt is just an emotion. It is information about your conditioning, not information about your morality. You can feel guilty and still hold your boundary. You can acknowledge the guilt without obeying it. You say to yourself, I feel guilty, and my boundary stands. Both things are true. The guilt does not mean you are wrong. It means you are doing something new. And new always feels uncomfortable before it feels normal. You will doubt yourself. You will have moments, especially at 3 a.m., where you wonder if you are being too harsh, too rigid, too unforgiving, if maybe they really have changed this time, if maybe you are throwing away a relationship that could be repaired. This doubt is normal, but doubt is not the same as wrongness. Doubt is your old programming trying to pull you back, your people-pleasing conditioning trying to regain control. In these moments, you return to your data, your energy audit, your documentation of how they actually treat you versus how they say they will treat you. Your body's response when you are around them. The facts override the doubt. You will face social pressure. Other people who do not understand the full dynamic, will tell you to give them another chance, to forgive, to remember that family is family, to be the bigger person. These people mean well, but their opinions are irrelevant. They are not living your life. They are not experiencing what you experience. They do not have access to your internal experience or your history with this person. And their comfort with your situation does not obligate you to stay in it. You can smile and nod, and then do exactly what you know is right for you. Other people's opinions about your boundaries are none of your business. There will be moments when giving in would be easier, when holding your boundary feels harder than just accommodating, when the path of least resistance is to go back to the old pattern. In these moments, you remember why you started. You remember the exhaustion, the erosion, the version of yourself you were becoming by staying. You remember that discomfort is not danger, that hard is not the same as wrong, that the temporary discomfort of holding a boundary is infinitely more survivable than the permanent damage of having none. And here is what happens. Each time you hold your boundary under pressure, you get stronger. Not in theory, in practice, in lived experience. You discover that you can tolerate someone's anger, that you can survive their disappointment, that their escalation doesn't destroy you. And this discovery builds something in you: resilience, confidence, proof that you can choose yourself even when it is hard, even when it costs something, even when other people are upset about it. And this proof becomes the foundation for the next boundary, and the next, until holding boundaries is not a battle anymore. It is just who you are. Someone who protects their peace. Someone who cannot be manipulated back into dysfunction. Someone who has become, finally, immune. You have walked through fire, through recognition and pain and the brutal work of rewiring patterns that once felt like identity. Through tools and science and pressure that tested every boundary you tried to build. And now you stand on the other side. Changed. Not into someone unrecognizable. Into someone more truly yourself than you have ever been. The version of you that existed before you learned to shrink. Before you started carrying other people's emotional weight as if it were your responsibility. Before you believed that being needed was the same as being loved. You are no longer the person who questions their reality when someone gaslights. When someone tells you that something did not happen the way you remember. When they insist you are being too sensitive about something that genuinely hurt. When they twist your words until you can barely remember what you actually said. You do not spiral into confusion anymore. You do not spend hours trying to figure out if maybe they are right. If maybe you did misunderstand. If maybe your perception is the problem. You trust yourself now. You know what you experienced. You know what was said. You know what you felt. And when someone tries to tell you that your reality is wrong, you recognize it immediately. Not as a point of confusion, as a point of departure. You are no longer the person who apologizes for having needs, for wanting respect, for expecting reciprocity, for requiring consistency, for needing rest or space or support. You spent years believing that your needs were inconvenient, that asking for anything made you high maintenance or demanding or difficult. You learned to minimize yourself, to ask for less than you needed, to frame your needs as optional preferences that could be dismissed without consequence. But you know now that needs are not negotiable, that people who love you do not make you feel guilty for being human, that relationships where you cannot have needs without apology are not relationships worth having. You are no longer the person who stays in situations that slowly kill your spirit because leaving feels harder than staying. You used to calculate wrong. You would measure the immediate discomfort of leaving against the ongoing pain of staying and somehow convince yourself that staying was the more bearable option. Because leaving meant confrontation or loss or disappointing people or being alone. And all of those things felt impossible. But you learned something crucial. The discomfort of leaving is temporary. The damage of staying is permanent. And once you truly understood that equation, once you felt it in your body and not just your mind, everything changed. You stopped tolerating the intolerable. You stopped enduring what should never be endured. You chose temporary discomfort over permanent erosion, and you survived it. More than survived. You discovered that on the other side of leaving was not the disaster you feared. It was peace, space, yourself. You have developed an internal navigation system. This is not something you think about anymore. It is something you feel. When you meet someone new, when you enter a situation, when someone makes a request or crosses a line, your system reads it. Instantly. Below conscious thought. Your body knows before your mind can articulate it. This person is safe. This person is not. This dynamic is healthy. This dynamic is extractive. This is connection. This is manipulation. And you trust what you feel. You do not override it with logic or justification or giving people the benefit of the doubt. You do not talk yourself out of your instincts. You honor them. You act on them. You have learned that your discomfort is information, that your body is wise, that the subtle feeling that something is off is usually right long before you can explain why. You can distinguish now between someone having a hard time and someone being hard to be around. This is a crucial distinction. Everyone goes through difficult periods. Everyone has moments of struggle where they need more support than usual. And healthy people, even in crisis, are still capable of basic respect. They still apologize when they hurt you. They still acknowledge your effort. They still recognize that their hard time does not give them permission to make you their emotional dumping ground. But toxic people use their struggles as justification, as a permanent excuse for behavior that should be temporary at most. They are always in crisis, always going through something, always needing more than they give. And their hard time never ends, because their hard time is not the problem. Their character is. You can see this now, and seeing it allows you to offer compassion without sacrificing yourself, to care without carrying, to hope they heal without believing you are the healer. You no longer attract toxic people. This might be the most remarkable change, the one that feels almost magical until you understand the mechanism. Toxic people are drawn to specific signals: uncertainty, the need for external validation, the willingness to overfunction, the fear of abandonment, the desperate need to be needed. And you used to emit all of these signals, loudly, consistently. You were a beacon for people who wanted someone to fix them, or fund them, or absorb their dysfunction without complaint. But you do not emit those signals anymore. You know your worth now. You do not need external validation to feel valuable. You do not overfunction to prove your worth. You are not afraid of being alone, because alone is better than poorly accompanied. You do not need to be needed, because your identity is not built on rescuing people who do not want to be rescued. And toxic people can sense this. They can feel that you are no longer a viable target, that the tactics that work on others will not work on you, that you have become fundamentally incompatible with dysfunction. So they do not approach. Or if they do approach, they leave quickly when they realize you are not going to play the games that used to work. You have become energetically immune, not through effort, through transformation. You are simply no longer the person they can use. Your boundaries are not walls. This is important. You did not close yourself off. You did not become hard or cold or cynical. Your boundaries are doors, doors that open easily for the right people and close firmly for the wrong ones. Healthy people do not find your boundaries threatening. They respect them naturally. They do not test to see if you really mean it. They do not push back or demand explanations. They just honor your limits, because that is what respect looks like. And you can feel the difference between people who move toward your boundaries with respect and people who move against them with resistance. The ones who respect them get access. The ones who resist them get distance. It is simple now, clear, no longer agonizing. Look at your life now. Look at the people in it. They are different, not perfect. Perfection is not the standard. But they are respectful. They show up when they say they will. They take responsibility for their emotions instead of making their feelings your problem. They can hear the word no without making you the villain. They celebrate your growth instead of resenting it. They add to your peace instead of disturbing it. These relationships feel different, easier. You are not working constantly to maintain them. You are not managing anyone. You are not translating or mediating or absorbing. You are just present. And so are they. and it feels like what you always thought relationships were supposed to feel like, but never actually experienced, until now. You have space now. This is what immunity created. Not isolation. Space. Space for relationships that actually deserve your energy. Space for work that fulfills you. Space for creativity and rest and joy and growth. Space to think your own thoughts without them being drowned out by other people's demands. Space to feel your own feelings without taking on everyone else's. Space to build a life that reflects your values instead of accommodating everyone else's dysfunction. This space is sacred. You protect it. Not aggressively, not defensively, just naturally. Because you know now what happens when you let the wrong people into it. And you will never go back to that. Immunity does not mean you never encounter toxic people. You do. They exist. They are part of the landscape of human relationship. But you recognize them immediately. You respond appropriately. You do not get pulled in. You do not try to fix them or prove yourself to them or give them chance after chance, hoping they will change. You observe. You assess. You decide. And if they do not belong in your life, you remove them without guilt or drama or lengthy explanation. You have learned that not everyone deserves access to you, that your time and energy and peace are precious, that you are allowed to be selective, that boundaries are not cruelty. They are clarity. You did not lose anyone who mattered. This is the truth you need to hear. The people you lost in this process, the ones who could not respect your boundaries, who got angry when you stopped overfunctioning, who accused you of changing in ways that were clearly meant as insults, you did not lose them. They were never yours. They were never truly present. They were using you, and when you stopped being useful, they left, or you left. Either way, what ended was not connection. It was extraction. It was a dynamic where you gave and they took, and that imbalance was called relationship. Losing that is not loss. It is liberation. What you gained is everything. You gained yourself, your peace, your clarity, your energy, your time, your life. You gained the ability to trust yourself, to honor your instincts, to set boundaries without guilt, to choose yourself without apology. You gained relationships that are reciprocal and respectful and real. You gained the knowledge that you can survive discomfort and disappointment and disapproval and come out stronger. You gained immunity, not to connection, to toxicity. And that immunity opened the door for everything else. You are not done growing. This is not the end of your journey. It is the beginning of a different one. A journey where you are not constantly defending yourself or recovering from people who hurt you. A journey where you move toward what you want instead of away from what you fear. A journey where relationships are sources of joy instead of sources of stress. Where your energy is invested in building instead of managing. Where your life belongs to you instead of being divided among people who never deserved access in the first place. You have become someone who knows that real love does not require constant proof, that healthy relationships do not feel like work, that genuine connection does not leave you depleted. You have become someone who values peace over performance, who understands that being alone is not the worst thing that can happen. Being with the wrong people is. You have become someone who trusts their internal navigation system, who recognizes safety and connection, who distinguishes between depth and dysfunction, who chooses themselves even when it costs something. You have become immune, not isolated, not closed, not hard, immune, wise, discerning, free. Finally free, free to say yes to what serves you and no to what does not, free to build a life that reflects your values, free to surround yourself with people who see you and celebrate you and respect you, free to rest without guilt, free to grow without resistance, free to exist without constantly defending your right to take up space. This is who you are now. This is what you built through every difficult boundary and uncomfortable conversation and moment of choosing yourself when it would have been easier to choose them. This is your immunity, your transformation, your life, and it is worth everything it cost, everything you released, everything you walked away from, everything you refuse to tolerate anymore. Because what you have now, this peace, this clarity, this version of yourself that knows its worth and will not compromise it, this is what you were always meant to have. This is what was waiting for you on the other side of choosing yourself. This is your life, reclaimed, rebuilt, finally, beautifully, undeniably yours.